Iraq is on edge as KRG leader Barzani defies the international community by going ahead with a controversial but non-binding referendum. Hello and welcome, I'm Ali Mustafa with a special edition of Strait Talk from Erbil in northern Iraq. It's a vote that threatens to rip apart an already fragile Iraq and plunge the Middle East into further chaos. The referendum in northern Iraq gave people two options: break away and split the country in two, or stay united. Iraq, Turkey, Iran and the United States have all condemned the referendum and have warned of grave consequences to come. And hidden behind this dangerous political gamble is a worsening economic situation in KRG, as Can Hassasu reports.
Erbil's historic citadel, once a well-known touristic attraction. The fight against Daesh has kept almost all visitors away. Before, he used to entertain crowds of visitors, but today he's playing for a group of Kurdish Peshmerga soldiers.
همون ناخۆشیێکمان دیتیە و کەواتە ئەمە هیچ کاتەچی زاروێ سەعب مار و حایلەکەی خۆشمان نەبووینە دەربەدەر بووینە کە هیچمان نەبووە بشخۆین ئەو ڕۆژانە لەبەوەمە هیچ تەسیرێکی لە کورد ناکاتن ئەو شتانە.
But not all Kurds agree with Hussein. Disputes with the government in Baghdad, a sharp decline in oil prices, internal wrangling within Kurdish politics, and the fight against Daesh have all taken their toll. The number of people who have grave doubts about the economy is now only growing. Luxury cars are now a bargain, thanks to little demand.
بەڵام پاش شەڕی داعش و پاش ئەوەی کە شەڕی داعشش ئێستا بەرەو کۆتایی چوونچووە و داعش بەرەو نەمان چۆ لە عێراق و هەرێمی کوردستان ئێستاش کاریگەری بە دواوە خۆی هێنایە ئێستاش دەبینین بازاڕەکان ڕوو لە کەسبوونە و بە تایبەتی ئێستاش کە مەسەلەی ڕیفراندوم ئەو لە ئارادا هەیە خەڵک ترسی ئەوەی هەیە کە دووبارە هەرێمی کوردستان بەرەو لاوازبوونێکی دیکە بڕواتن لە بەرامبەر ئابووری و بژێوی ژیانی خەڵک.
Erbil once had ambitions to be Iraq's Dubai, teeming financial hub of high-rises and luxury villas. But economic uncertainty has left giant construction sites idle. These villas used to fetch a price tag of $1 million. Today, they are selling for less than half that.
خەڵکی کوردستان هەمووی لەگەڵ ریفراندۆمە بەڵام قەلەقێکی دروست کردووە لەبەرەوەی کەس نازانی دوای ریفراندۆم داهات و چ دەبیتن ئەوەش زیاتر ئەویش تەسیری کردی وەزعی اقتصادی ئێستا زۆر خراپە.
And to discuss the ground realities in KRG further, I'm joined by our correspondent, Can Hassasu. Can, as we saw in your report, the economic conditions on the ground aren't necessarily that good, are they, in KRG?
Indeed, actually, the economic conditions are not bad only for the investors and businessmen here in the Kurdish regional government, but ordinary people affected from the consequences as well, because the most simple thing is they can't get their salaries properly. So this is affecting the whole market, their whole lifestyle, and they don't know if it's gonna get even worse in the future or not.
The KRG Parliament convened after a lapse of 2 years. What was the reason behind that, and what is the political situation in KRG?
Well, after Masoud Barzani's 2 terms in the rule here as a president of the KRG, there was a big discussion at the Kurdish parliament, and the Kurdish parties agreed to give Masoud Barzani 2 years of rule, a de facto time to just renew the presidential law and agree about the terms after Barzani. But just at that time, Daesh came out, and Daesh actually changed the whole program for the whole country.
In 2014?
In 2014, and since 2014 until now, Daesh became the priority for the region and for Iraq.
So you've got a bad economic situation. Politically, there's a bit of a mess, as you said. Did the referendum then act as a distraction of sorts?
Some people say yes, it was the last move that Barzani could do under such circumstances, and some says this is something that the Kurds have been looking for since long time ago, and some says like Daesh and the fight with Daesh and the relationship that gets worse and worse with Baghdad forced the regional government to go to go for this at this specific time. But most of the people that we talk here, they see that going for a referendum was early decision, and they had much more serious problems that has to be addressed before such an attempt.
John Sasu, thank you so much. And for a better understanding of the economic prospects in the KRG, in the aftermath of the referendum, I'm joined from Istanbul by Nurullah Gur. He's an associate professor of economics at Istanbul Medipol University. Thank you for joining us, Nurullah. Can the KRG leadership afford to be cut off from international markets as a consequence of going ahead with this referendum?
Well, the economy of the Kurdish regional government depends heavily on exporting oil and importing goods and services. So this means that this connection from the international markets will be really harmful for the economy of the region. And in addition to that, we should also underline that the central government is going to cut financial resources to the northern Iraq, and this will be also harmful for the economy.
The economic situation in northern Iraq is already pretty bad. What can the people expect in the future, considering the harsh international reaction to this referendum?
If countries, including regional powers and global powers, impose economic sanctions to Kurdish regional governments, in the region, inflation will go up and standard of living will go down. Individuals in the region are the ones that will be mostly affected by this process, by this situation.
Nurullah, will a successful referendum improve KRG's economic prospects?
As I said before, the economy of the region depends heavily on international trade. So it doesn't matter whether the referendum is successful or fail. This integration, this connection from the international markets will affect the economy of the region so negatively, especially in the short and medium term. But we should also underline that there are lots of international companies that produce oil in the region. So economic reactions of the global actors such as United States and Russia will also determine the future of the economy in the region.
An estimated $7 billion worth of trade from KRG passes through Turkey's Habur crossing. Will tighter border controls by Turkey put more economic pressure on KRG, Nurullah?
Well, for now, it seems that this is a security measure. But if Turkey expects that regional risks are going to increase in upcoming weeks or months, Turkey will use the option to impose economic sanctions, including closing the Habur border.
Nurullah Gur, thank you for joining us from Istanbul. Still to come on Strait Talk, we take you to Kirkuk, where a diverse ethnic makeup could spark more violence in the aftermath of a yes vote. And what caused this mess in the first place? We go back more than a century to break down a shadowy treaty that sowed the seeds of conflict for generations to come. No city in all of northern Iraq represents the potential dangers arising from a yes vote than Kirkuk. It's an ethnically diverse city with a sizable population of Arabs, Kurds, and Turkmen, and unilaterally changing the status quo without consulting these many different groups, activists say, is bound to lead to disaster, as Omer Kablan explains.
Defying the international community, the Kurdish regional government went ahead with a referendum to extend its authority and its territory. The KRG not only held the referendum in areas under its control, but also extended it to disputed areas outside of its jurisdiction. The most controversial of these was the city of Kirkuk. Composed of Kurds, Turkmen, Arabs, and the Syrians, fears are high that the city could descend into chaos once the result of the referendum sets in. Many Kurds here want the city to join the KRG, but for many Turkmen, historically, the city is not Kurdish. Some believe the referendum was nothing more than a land grab, with the KRG harboring ulterior motives.
Peşmerge gücü bizim güvenliğimizi sağlamır. Peşmerge gücü önceden Erbil Süleymaniye'nin sınırlarını Kirkuk'tan kendi bölgelerini bir de petrol yataklarına nasıl petrolün üzerine kontrol etsinler.
Control over oil is a major factor for both the Iraqi and Kurdish regional government's interests in Kirkuk. The city's Arab residents fear the result could spark ethnic tensions.
موضوع الاستفتاء مرفوض لدى المكون العربي بإقامته في هذه المحافظة. العربي أو التركماني يقبل أن يكون تحت راية العلم العراقي، لأن العلم العراقي أو العراق ما يتبع لأحد، ولكن من يكون هناك دولة تسمى كردستان فهي معلومة لمن انتمائها ومن ينتمي إليه.
Complicating the matter are questions surrounding the referendum's legality.
Bir oldu bittiye tabi tutulması ihtimaline karşı Irak merkezi hükümetiyle koordinasyon halinde bir çalışma içine gireceğiz. Nihayet Irak'ın toprağıdır, hükümranlık hakkı oradadır.
The consequences are already being felt. As Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan said, Turkey will seal its border with northern Iraq, and Iran's foreign ministry said they've already closed their borders with the KRG. Turkey and Iraq have also warned that military force may be used if violence erupts in places like Kirkuk, a city that remains on edge as the threat of conflict looms. Omer Kablan, Strait Talk.
And to discuss the inclusion of Kirkuk in this referendum, we're joined by Sundus Abbas. She's the president of the European Turkmen Association. Sundus, thank you for joining us. Why do you think the KRG has risked more violence by including Kirkuk in this referendum, given the sensitivities around that city?
Well, thank you for having me. First of all, I have to mention that Kirkuk is not a Kurdish city as not historically or geographically as the Kurds claiming, for a simple reason, and it's not the stage that we discuss this matter more, but I will refer to these census, decent census, which took place in Iraq, which it was in 1957. In that census, the population in Kirkuk, it was 65% Turkmen, and 16% represented Arab and 12% represented Kurds. So there is no way from declining the claim from the Kurdish side. They want to include Kirkuk because it's Kurdish, because it's not, basically. And to coming back to your question, why they are including Kirkuk into the city, basically Kirkuk, it has the world 4% crude reserve and 80% Iraqi crude reserve in Kirkuk, and simply is for that reason they wanted to sustain the proposed state, Kurdish state, in the future.
As you mentioned, Kirkuk is historically a Turkmen city. What is the Turkmen stance on this referendum then?
We are against this referendum for many reasons. First of all, it's not constitutional, it's illegal. It has been approved by the Iraqi government, neither by the lawmakers in Iraq or by the international community, part of Israel. Second, the Kirkuk city went through two demographic change process. One of them in Saddam Hussein era when he replaced Turkmen and Kurd with Arabs, and second one after 2003 when the Kurds brought into the city more than 850,000 Kurds and settle them in Kirkuk so they can guarantee in the vote for their favor in any process like referendum or election in the future. So this is what happened in the election 2014. At the same thing, it's happened in election 2010.
Sondus, we've been getting reports of increasing violence in and around Kirkuk. Do you think after this referendum we can expect more conflict?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, yes, we are hearing that violence cases taking place in this area, and we knew this kind of referendum which have been taken by one side in this, especially including Kirkuk and other disputed area, will have negative impact on the security situation, which is already had a very fragile situation. We heard that in some of the areas they are imposing to people, especially Turkmen and Arab, to go to vote, and otherwise they are going to be kicked out the city. I think with this situation, we didn't hope that this kind of incident will happen. We didn't. That's why we are against referendum. And I think in Kirkuk, you can't deny that it should be run by its own people, and it should have special status within Iraq, and managed by the people who live in there. And I think the Article 23 for the Resolution 36, which passed from the lawmakers in 2008, put a good mechanism how to do that by managing by quota and power sharing in the city. This is the only solution Turkmen sees is going to work in Iraq, so everyone can live in harmony and peace.
Sondus Abbas, thank you for joining us from London. Present-day boundaries in the Middle East can be traced back to shadowy agreements forged during the First World War between world powers. One of these deals was the Sykes-Picot Agreement between Britain and France. It divided post-Ottoman Arab lands, creating new states in the process, such as present-day Iraq. Osman Lone explains how the ghosts of Sykes-Picot looms large over KRG's referendum.
100 years since the Sykes-Picot deal, Iraq is on the verge of tearing itself apart. A referendum proposed by the Kurdish regional government will decide Iraq's fate, whether to remain as a unified country or split in two. Turkey says this will lead to more bloodshed and chaos, repeating the mistakes of history, where violence settles all. A century ago, Great Britain and France made a secret deal, the Sykes-Picot Agreement. It was signed towards the end of World War I, as the Ottoman Empire was crumbling. The British and French made a mad scramble to carve up the spoils of war. After several meetings and agreements, the modern-day borders of Syria, Iraq, and the rest of the Middle East were drawn. New nations were created from scratch, bringing together people who had nothing in common and separating those that did. It was all done to ensure Europe's imperial domination would continue through a policy of divide and rule. In 1916, British Foreign Policy Advisor Edward House warned, "They are making it a breeding place for future war." A dark prophecy that would be proven true. And now a similar turning point is on the horizon with the KRG's proposed referendum. Despite the risks, the president of the KRG, Masoud Barzani, says it's their only option. After the US invasion, the KRG established its own borders, created a flag, built government buildings, and its own security forces, all the hallmarks of an independent state. But according to them, it's not enough. The KRG is blaming Iraq's central government of not fulfilling its promises to share the country's wealth and a delicate flashpoint lies in the city of Kirkuk, which many believe will erupt after the referendum. Turkish Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu says, in that country which has been through so many problems, a referendum on independence can make the situation even worse. God forbid, it could even bring civil war. The US, Iran, and many others also think the referendum is a bad idea. So how will the region remain peaceful going forward? The lessons of Sykes-Picot tells us that creating new borders arbitrarily would lead to generations of violence and instability. Will the KRG's insistence on a referendum lead to another century of bloodshed?
And for more on the legacy of the Sykes-Picot Agreement, I'm joined from Amman by Masoud Ozcan. He is the director of the School of Diplomacy at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Masoud, Sykes-Picot drew arbitrary borders according to imperialist interests 100 years ago. Now new borders can be drawn along ethnic lines. Will this solve the region's problems, in your opinion?
According to, if we go with this type of referendum and possible new borders in the region, I think there will be more and more instability in the region, because dividing countries, dividing societies will not bring the desired peace and stability in our region. Unfortunately, we witnessed these problems in the past, and it may seem that we may have the same problems again and again. Although there were some problems in the past in terms of geographical division in the region, at the same time representation of many ethnic and religious groups in different states and societies, still dividing nations, dividing states is not the right answer. What we should strive for is to have more and more representative governments and also equal distribution of welfare in these countries. So for this reason, maybe we may have division in our region, in our countries, but this will not bring the desired stability.
What kind of new problems will this bring to the region, in your opinion?
There will be some clashes between groups in terms of, especially in mixed areas. We can say that there are some groups they are dispersed in different areas. We are not talking about ethnically or religiously homogeneous groups, societies, cities. So in Iraq today, for example, there are some states and regions where ethnic Turks, Kurds, Arabs live together. So there are some differences among them as well. But if we have this type of referendum and also political divisions in the future, there will be more and more problems, clashes, because of these cities or regions, especially mixed regions, mixed areas.
Iraq, Iran, the US and Turkey are all against this referendum. Why does Turkey specifically, a country that has supported Barzani for a long time, harshly criticize this referendum?
Turkey supported many groups in Iraq, not specifically Barzani, but if we talk about increasing the relationship between Turkey and KRG in the last couple of years, we witnessed there were high contacts, political, economic and social relations. For this reason, what is Turkey against today is the unconstitutional referendum. Turkey is supporting the territorial integrity of Iraq, but at the same time asking the Iraqi governments to be representative of all of ethnic and religious backgrounds. For this reason, Turkey is in contact with many different actors in Iraq, not particularly with one group, but since Barzani is controlling the region neighboring Turkey, it is only natural for Turkey to develop good relations with this KRG, with the leader of the KRG. But on the other hand, this doesn't mean that if there is something wrong, that this prevents to Turkey from saying this is wrong and we should not go this way.
Masoud Ozcan, thank you for joining us from Amman. There is no question that Iraq's identity as a state has been volatile since its inception. The brutal regime of Saddam Hussein acted as a lid to prevent ethnic tensions from boiling over. But after the US invasion in 2003, the wounds that were inflicted nearly a century ago started festering out in the open. With politicians in Baghdad mired in internal wrangling, the KRG saw an opening, a chance to achieve something that on paper looks appealing, but in reality could be devastating. The referendum is a very emotional issue for the Kurds. but emotions can often lead to bad outcomes. Turkey says Kurds are not voting for freedom. Instead, Ankara thinks they are being led on a dangerous political path that will only isolate them in the world's eyes, not bring them more in, as some have argued. But with a yes vote in, many are wondering what happens next. For Turkey, if ethnic tensions in places like Kirkuk flare up, the KRG will have blood on its hands. And it's a scenario that Ankara has warned will force it to act. Tell us what you think on #Strait Talk. And that's all for this special edition of Strait Talk from Erbil in northern Iraq. Until next time, hoşça kalın and goodbye.